Hey everyone, this is the Spiritual AF Podcast, and I'm your host, Judd Fink. On this podcast, you'll hear about my personal journey that led me on the path to spiritual growth, the journey of my guests, and the wisdom that we've gained along the way. It's important to me to put this podcast out in hopes that the stories contained in it resonate with the listener and assist people on their own path to healing and growth. I am deeply thankful to even have the opportunity to do this. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun, guys. So let's go. And thank you so much for listening. Hey, everyone. This is Spiritual AF Podcast. I'm Judd Fink, and I'm here today with Christina Schatsiek. Schatsiek, yes. And she is a great many things. She's an author, a mom, a life coach. She's been into web design and all kinds of things. Just super interesting spiritual person, and she's on her path and doing her thing. So, you know, you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Like, what is everything that you do?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. For me, I don't know. I'm kind of a fly by the seats of my pants kind of person. Like, I've grown to really love not having to follow the path of what societal expectations tell me. And I've learned that I can pick something up for 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 years, and it'll give me something out of it. And so for me, I'm somebody that really doesn't like to be put in a box. Yeah. But, you know, when people say, well, what do you do? And I'm like, oh man, I do lots of things, because lots of different things fill my cup in different ways. And so, and I've learned to embrace that. And so for me, I'm just a mom and a wife at the time that had woke up and didn't have a fucking clue who she was. I didn't know where I was going, what I wanted, what I liked to do. And I always kind of refer to, most of us have seen the Titanic, right?
Yeah.
And that scene where Rose is on the boat and she says she feels like she's screaming and nobody looks up. That's what I felt like. Like, even saying that, I get chills. Like, I felt like nobody saw me, nobody heard me, but I also didn't see and hear myself. And I think if you want to connect with other people, begins here. So as much as I wanted to point and blame fingers at other people, what they did or didn't do, I really had to look at myself. And of course I can blame and look at, you know, other people for their stuff, but it all starts here. And how did I get where I was? And how did I want to get out of it? And I was overwhelmed entirely by that concept. I love the self-help realm, but I feel like there's so many modalities.
Yeah.
When I was ready to feel better, I looked at all these things and panicked because I was so overwhelmed at the concept of which things do I try, which things do I do, and then I'd go back inward. And it's almost like I'd come out the door and get scared and run back in my proverbial house, which had been my prison in a way. And so along that journey, I would say about 6 years ago or so, I had come across an event like on Facebook from a friend through a friend of doing a vision board. And I had never done one before. At that time, I had kind of dabbled in therapy on and off, but I had a lot of trauma throughout my childhood and a lot of trauma in my divorce. And so for so long, I just shut everything off. I threw myself 100% into being a wife and a mom, and I don't regret that. You know, I kind of have this saying of no regrets. You know, the guy with a tattoo, no regrets. So I certainly don't have any. It was where I needed to be, and it got me where I am today. But I had never done a vision board, never done anything where I really said, what do I want? What do I want? Oh, crap. How do I even begin to figure that out? So I was excited about going to the event, and something had happened with my son, and I couldn't make it. Well, then the lady who was running it reached out and said, hey, I know that you weren't able to make it, so I'd love to give you a free one-on-one session. Yeah. And it was kind of one of those glimmers, God drops, you know, faiths, the universe, whatever you might call it, put us into that connection. Yeah. I mean, I may have missed out on one thing, but I gained so much more. Yes. And so I went to her house and did like and she was a personal development coach too. She's amazing. And in that moment, in talking with her, within like 5 minutes, I was crying, and she helped me see little glimmers in myself that I didn't see. And I think you need those people that see the parts of you that you don't see. Yeah. And so that's where my path jumped off, if we want to say. And she's still my life coach. I still see her 2 times a month. She's one of my best friends, and she will pick me up when I am crawling and has seen every version of myself. And so I think we aren't who we are without the people that we have in our tribe.
Wow. That's that whole thing, just that intro was amazing,
Yeah.
It's so true though, like how we're lost
Yeah.
and we don't know who the hell we are.
Right.
And then some life-changing moment happens.
And it can be small or little things that build, right?
Yeah. And it's overwhelming, and you don't know what to do with it. You just have to start moving and making.
And you're scared.
And you're scared the whole time.
And as adults, we don't want to admit that we're scared. I'm scared on a daily basis of something. I'm insecure about something. And I think sometimes people look at, for example, I've had people who say, well, you write and you speak and, they look at you as, and I'm like, I am a majorly perfectly imperfect person, 1000%. And so I think it's remembering that everybody has their stuff. Everybody struggles, but it's really hard sometimes to admit, hey, I'm lost. Hey, I'm struggling. Hey, I really don't know what to do. I don't know how to get up. I need help. And I think for me, that was my first step of actually saying some things out loud to her that I didn't even realize was in me at the time, Yeah.
Yeah. It took, in my own experience, a long time to even come to those realizations of like, I need help. I need to talk to somebody and stuff. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that as well.
Sure. Yeah.
And what the awakening process is scary as hell, because you don't know who you are.
Right. And you kind of have to die.
Yeah.
And I get chills as I say that, but versions of me have died in those last 6 years, and more of them have really died over the last 3 years. Like you get deeper and deeper and you meet a different level of yourself, and you have to love all those versions, which has been a struggle for me sometimes, to love the messy parts, the shadow parts of myself and the things, the insecurities and all of that. And so it's definitely a process, and it's not a destination. You're like, oh, touchdown, I'm healed.
No,
it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It's an ebb and a flow. And so I think offering yourself grace is the biggest thing you can do.
Yep. Forgive yourself.
Yeah.
Because all your parts, there are no bad parts.
Right.
They don't exist.
They served you for, like I saw this lady and I never really understood the shadow work. The inner child work I got a little bit more, but the shadow, it took me a while to kind of, and I'm still learning. I'm still every day learning something.
Sure, yeah.
But they were talking about, the parts of you that might yell or scream or flee or hide or all of those, they served you a purpose when you were young. The things that happened to you, the shadow part of yourself really just wants to keep you safe. The way that it keeps you safe is not always healthy.
Yeah.
It's not always good for you and those around you.
Right.
But if you can learn to offer gentleness to those parts and say, hey, I got it now. I don't need that. The way that I learned to survive is not the way that I want to learn to live. And so that process has been mucky and beautiful at the same time.
It ends up being perfect,
Right.
because other people watch you grow too, and then it helps them.
Right.
Right. In that process.
And you learn from them. Like I've never spoke at a retreat or had a workshop that I equally didn't learn from the people that were in the seats.
Exactly.
And so it's just beautiful. Like the human connection. And I think society, I hate to get on that soapbox, but there's such a huge amount of disconnect with phones, with internet, with social media. It all serves a purpose. There's good and bad and all of that. But we lose the connection. And I think spirituality, going along with your podcast, I think spirituality is multifaceted for me. And it's so unique. What I mean as spirituality is not the same as somebody else, maybe. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And so I lost faith with my Christianity for a long time, rediscovered that after my divorce. And it was beautiful. It helped me understand unconditional love in a way that I never could. And there comes my chills again. That I could be loved unconditionally, which is something that I struggle with is, one of my core beliefs. And I know you've talked about EMDR. I love EMDR. I've significantly spent a long time in that. One of my core beliefs is that I need to be perfect to be loved. And so for me, which is intellectually I know is not correct.
Yeah.
But what's inside, that little girl of me, that's what she feels, that she needs. And so for me, breaking that down and understanding what does that mean to me and why do I feel that way and how I can love that part of myself and tell her I've got it kind of a thing, you know?
Yeah.
And some days I got it and some days I'm like, I don't know, girl, you're going to have to, you know, I don't know. And so.
Yeah. As you referred to, you know, the ebb and flow.
Right.
Before there's just balance in everything. And it's being conscious of like, well, for myself, catching myself going to those negative places.
Right.
You know, and being like, no, it doesn't have to be like this. You can think about this in a different way.
Right. We have the power to completely rewire it.
Yes.
As long as we also don't allow our own bullshit.
Yeah.
I think a lot of
that
us,
gets in the way.
A lot of us can sit there and feel sorry for ourselves and make excuses. And there's a time and a place for that. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I certainly had one of those the other day. I was like, I don't want to go up to the gym. You know, I'm really tired. You know, we all have that. But at some point, you kind of got to check your ego at the door and you kind of got to say, which do I want to do? Do I want to feel better or not? And it can be really hard to have that honest love with yourself at the same time.
Yes.
You know, and so that's kind of how I got into, so backing up to my story. So about 3 years ago, I separated from my husband and there was a lot of stuff in there that I needed to work on and heal from. And throughout the process, it forced me to kind of sit in, I think when you're in a relationship and you're alone in a relationship, it's the worst thing ever. That disconnect and the things that took place in there, which, you know, I won't get into. But for me, having that separation and really looking at the rose-colored glasses coming off and going, oh, man, this is what was really happening. This is the role I played. These are the things that's happening. And here's how it was affecting my son was really, really difficult. And so no longer having him in the household caused me to, I was already lonely, but it was a different type of lonely. I was alone physically. And when I was alone physically, I couldn't overdo. And so for me, while we were married, I had started doing coaching with my friend Robin, but I got the entrepreneur bug. And once it bites you, you're done. And so it's beautiful, but you're done because you no longer look at 9 to 5. And it's great if people work a 9 to 5 and they totally love it. Yeah. I love that for you. But it's not for everybody, you know, just like college isn't for everybody, just like, you know, certain things aren't for everybody. It's okay.
Correct.
But I started to realize my life didn't have to be the way I thought it was. And so I had ran St. Jude and I needed a way to raise money. So I started making skincare. And I had just done it because I have always made my own skincare. It's just something that I love to do. Yeah. And I needed a way to raise money. And when I had sold it, I immediately met my marker. Because if you don't make that amount of money, you don't run or you got to pay it. And I was like, well, I ain't got it, so I better figure out how to hustle this. And so, you know, it kind of put me on the shit or get off the pot kind of thing.
Good, yeah.
And so I was like, oh, this was fun. And then people kept coming back to me saying, hey, I'm out. Can I get more? I was like, nah, dude, that was just a one-time thing. You know, like I don't have time. I have a autistic son who was struggling at the time. My marriage was in chaos. I was trying to figure out who I was. I really felt like I really didn't need something else to do. And I was already kind of doing some health coaching and doing essential oils because they had really significantly helped my son, which I could talk for hours on, but I'll save that for another time.
That's awesome, yeah.
Because I realized that I could, if the things that were helping my family, I couldn't stay quiet about. And I think when you start to do your self-discovery, your self-help, whatever you want to call it, and you start to feel better, you literally want that for everybody. You can't keep it to yourself. It's physically impossible to keep it to yourself. You literally want to be like, oh, try this. It really helped me. Like, I want you to be better. When you love people, you want them to feel better. And so that's kind of how I had gotten into all of that. Well, then I quickly decided, what's one more thing? Sure, let's do the skincare too. So I was shipping all over the United States. I was coaching. I was doing my oils. I had my son, you know, and he was born at a pound. So he's definitely my miracle baby. So he's got some physical and mental delays and some significant challenges in some ways. But he's also funny and beautiful. And just this morning he went to work wearing a security vest. And, I was like, way to go, buddy. Have a great day.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was one of those things where in hindsight, when I looked back at that, while all those things were beautiful, I was distracting. I was grasping at all of these things to give me happiness because I was so unhappy in my connection with my husband, but also the connection with myself.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of moms do that, and men do that, husbands do that, fathers do that, everybody does that, where you're like, it's selfish if I take care of me. I just need to give to everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
And I that whole cliche statement of you can't pour from an empty cup is true.
It is.
But you don't really listen to it. A lot of us really don't listen to it.
Switching our mind to that, to actually taking care of ourselves is a process, and it's a hell of a process because like I have inner child work to do and all this stuff. And like, because of my childhood, not being accepted, needing love, like so I just gave and gave and gave and gave, to everybody all the time, like looking for acceptance.
Because we're also doing it because we want something back, right?
Correct.
That was really icky for me to realize when I had my therapist say, well, the people that take from others can be manipulative, but the people that really just constantly give, you're giving because you're really wanting something back. And I was like, oh, that's gross. And I really, I had to sit in it for a while and go, oh, so if I'm giving, I really need to give with no expectations and because it's coming from my heart, not because, if I give them this, I hope they'll love me. If I give them this, I hope it makes them happy. If I give them this, then whatever. And then it becomes transactional.
Yeah. And you don't ever want anything to be transactional, in like relationships. Whew. But I'm just thinking in my mind, going back to that stuff, it's like that whole process is just like a hell of a thing where you come to your realizations like, man, I got work to do. I got, like I got to get my mind out of this, like not being loved and not,
right. What do I need? What do I want? I don't know. Let's figure it out,
Yeah, exactly. And that, it's really difficult to explain, how that makes you feel in those moments. Like, where
like this.
Yeah, you feel very small. That's right. And that it's terrifying to go there. It's
because you don't want to be abandoned.
Yeah.
That was a big thing for me. Was also for me, I was always, as a little girl, kind of taught to be seen, not heard. Yeah. And so I would be quiet. I would cry quietly. I would hide quietly. I would, I always kind of had a little bit of a spark to me and a mouth occasionally that would come out.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I was more demure because I didn't want to rock the boat. And when I was a child, it was kind of like, whether you want to call it sensitive, empath, whatever label that you want to put on it.
Right.
The point is, a lot of us, whether we have gifts combined with trauma that created us, or it's just trauma, there's different things. And so for me, I had spent so much time being quiet and not speaking up that it was really hard for me to even just talk about my emotions, to say, hey, I feel this when you do this, or hey, this isn't working for me, I can't come today, I'm feeling this, or I'm upset, can we talk about it, or I'm hurt, or whatever. But a lot of times I would want to stay on the surface. I'm angry, I'm sad. Well, there's a lot of more emotions than those.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm angry because I'm feeling abandoned.
Yes.
I'm sad because I feel ashamed, because I'm scared. And so for me, I literally got out an emotions wheel and was like, when I would journal, I would be like, for me, speaking on my emotions was a major trigger, so I knew it was a really an area I needed to pinpoint on.
Yeah.
And so when I would journal every day, I would start with, I feel. I'd literally get out my wheel and be like, okay, I'm feeling kind of blah, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry today. And I literally work my way down, and then I'd be like, I'm feeling abandoned today. And I'm like, oh, that hits. And I think if you go to your partner, a friend, a family member, whoever, and you're like, I'm angry, it doesn't hit right. But if you go and say, hey, when you did this, I felt abandoned and I felt really sad and it made me feel scared, saying that is scary.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is extremely scary, but it's so beautiful. And it's one of those things, the more you practice it, the easier it gets. And it helps you realize who can meet you there and who are your people and who aren't. And sometimes it's not the people that you think will be there at the end of the day. Yep. And that's really hard. And then you kind of want to retreat and go, I don't want to talk because, but no. That situation, God, the universe, whatever that might be, revealed to you those things, and it allowed you to see who could step into that space with you. And so for me, I very much believe in God, but I also believe in spirit, in nature, in the universe, in the spirituality and connection between people.
Yes.
And so for me, it's very multifaceted, and I love to connect with all of it. I love to learn different religions and different things. And I love to soak it up because I just think at the end of the day, it all leads back to the same place.
Yourself?
Yeah.
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 And Steve Johnson is making an appearance.
He says, I want to say hi.
Yeah. Hey, buddy. But yeah, everything, I even say this to people, like, all the answers are inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
If you can stop and listen.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that takes taking yourself away from everything,
mm-hmm.
Everything that everything that you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
And another terrifying thing to do.
Yeah.
And everyone is connected. Everything is connected, just how the energy flows.
Energy is tangible. There's times I meet people. I don't know if you're the same way. Like, you meet people and you're just like, my friends will be like, well, what'd you think? I'm like, mm-mm. And they're like, you didn't even talk to them. I'm like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
It is just one of those things. Like, even if you, like, as a child, I would walk into a room and I could tell that my mom and my stepdad had been arguing, and it was thick.
Yeah.
And it was uncomfortable and it was painful. And you want to and then you want to avoid that. So then you shrink away. And instead of trying to figure out where do you fit in all of that and what is that and why did I feel that way and all of that.
Yeah. We are barometers, for energy. Like, and it's important to pay attention to how you feel around someone else or around certain environments or whatever, because your body is telling you something, in those moments.
You just got to tap into it. And I think so many of us have been shut off, deconditioned, whatever, caught in the hustle and bustle of everyday life. It happens, right? There's no blame or shame in that. But we've shut off our natural connection. We've shut off our natural powers, our natural feelings to be able to say, this is my person or not. Like, I always think it's funny. Like, my friends will be like, oh, I met this guy and he's giving me all these butterflies. And I went, X-nay, no. That's not always good. That could be like a trauma response. Like, find people you feel comfortable with, people that make you feel safe, to say and share and be around, not somebody that makes you a nervous Nelly when you're around them. There's something to that. What that is, I don't know. That's different for every person.
Right.
But paying attention to where your energy goes and who you spend your time in your life with. Because one of my favorite quotes is what is it? Shoot, I had it and then it went poof.
That's okay.
The squirrels took it away. But it can be where the energy that you allow in your life will either infect you or affect you. And you get to choose. And so, when people say, well, I'm not happy and this is going on, or I'm struggling with this, and it's like, okay, then what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
And it's really hard sometimes to be like, oh man, that starts with me. I'm allowing this into my life. I might not be responsible for this, but and there's not a victim blame in that, but you figuring out how you can remove yourself, because I had a lot of shame with that, staying in a marriage as long as I did.
Yep.
That was abusive as it was. And you look back at it and you're like, I had so much shame that I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't want somebody to look at me differently. I didn't want them to treat me like I was some delicate flower. I didn't want to admit that I had stayed in it, that I had made my own excuses, that I had made my own reasonings for it, And so we never really know somebody's path. And unless they want you to know, they're not going to let you know. And so I think it's so important to be there for your people, but also to be there for yourself at the same time.
So yeah, and even like in relationships with people and how they make you feel, and based on like the things that we shut off naturally and everything because of society and just our lives, period.
Or you're like, ooh, I like them and I love them, so I'm going to ignore this. It's like,
yes, but if it's not good for you, then it's not good for you. And it's difficult. It can be difficult. Like you say, a marriage, I've been divorced, like I stayed in it for way too long. And just because you're holding on to something.
Because there's comfort.
There. There's comfort in your misery.
Yeah.
As well. And I'll speak for, I wasn't mature enough at the time to have the conversations that I needed to have.
Right.
In that marriage.
Right. And either you are or that person. Like you can, they say talking or communication is important, and it is, but understanding is more important. And you have to have somebody that can meet you there. Yeah. And so you have to be brave enough to go there. And then you have to try to figure out, can they meet me there? Like, if I say this, are they mature enough to understand? Am I mature enough to understand? And so for me, I got married. I was 19. I was a baby. Yeah. And I had got pregnant young and thought that was the next thing. And then my son was born extremely early. He was a pound when he was born. And so I threw myself into that, trying to give him the life that I didn't have from my childhood. And then I woke up and realized one day there's way worse things than divorce. Yeah. And that's what I thought was the worst thing ever. And the worst thing was having two unhappy people, that's what my son was seeing was the version of love, that's what he was seeing. And I was blind to that for so long. And then I had shame in that. Oh man, that's what and so I had to sit in all of those layers of the shame and the blame that I had for myself. But then realizing, okay, I'm ready to do better and be better. And I need to see if this person can meet me there or not. Then I have to be brave enough. I got to put on my big girl panties. Yeah. And I've got to be brave enough to do the hard thing. And then knowing that even when divorce is right, especially when you've got kids, it's a whole horse of a different color, right? Because it becomes, how do you make it right for the kid and how do you protect them so they don't feel like they are the innocent ones in everything. So then how do you make it okay for them? And then how do you help them heal, right? Yeah. So then you're trying to heal yourself while healing your kids. And so for me, I realized for a long time I hid crying from my son. And I had gone to church, and this was a really interesting story. So when I would go to church, I would cry because I was just so connected and all of that in the moment to the people around me, to spirit, whatever that might be. Yeah. And he comes up, he's like, I don't want to sit with you today. And I was like, well, fine then. Yeah. Why not? He's like, because you cry and it makes you uncomfortable and I don't know what to do. And so then I realized, and I had talked to his therapist about it. And he was like, well, how often do you cry from? I was like, well, I wanted him to always think I was strong. And so I always hid away. I never let him see all of those layers of emotion. So the only time he saw me crying was when there was something traumatic between me and my ex-husband. And so to him, it made him scared. Yeah. As a young man himself, his mom crying made him scared and made him fearful. And how does he work through that? And how does he process through that? And so then I had to learn that I had to stop and I had to peel off this fleshy mask that I had on for everybody else. Yeah. And I had to, one of my poems, and I write poetry, and we can kind of talk to how I got into that. But I literally feel like I had to flip myself inside out and show every nerve and everything. And obviously there's certain things you don't share with your children, right? It's not their burden to carry. But it got to be to where I was like, you know what? I'm going to show you what it looks like to be raw and vulnerable and cry and deal with these things so you understand, and to also understand, Mom's going out tonight. Well, where are you going? What are you doing? Well, you're going to go with Papa and you'll be fine, Yeah. Because I want him to see that layer of selfishness, and I hate that word, but that's what we can kind of call it. Correct. That layer of self-care, self-love, self-time is imperative. And if I'm not mirroring that to him, then I don't want him to get in situations where he can't, speak his emotions and cry and take time for himself and do the things he loves. And I speak a lot from a woman's perspective. My poetry, my book, and all of that is typically from that view because that's my view. But as my son's gotten older, and especially as I've dated, I've really started to understand more and more how much men and women both struggle. We just struggle differently. And so I've watched the stigma that society places on men start to trickle down to my son, and that he needs to speak this way, be this way, stuff his emotions, don't cry, all of these, that layer of absolute bullshit that's out there for men. And women have their layers of bullshit too that they're faced in society. So, both have their stuff. But how do I teach him all of these things so that he is safe within himself, right? And so I think, women can struggle with loss and wanting to no longer be here and all of those kinds of things. But it's even higher in men. And so trying to figure out, how can I be there for my son in a way that helps him be a happy, complete, connected, whole man, and make him feel comfortable in his own skin, especially as a young man that has challenges. And, people can look at him and make their own judgments and assumptions, but I love him. Like he shows up 100% authentically as himself, and he doesn't give two shits about what anybody else has to say. And sometimes I look at him and I'm like, I just love it. I love it. Like, I learn from him on a daily basis.
No, that's perfect. And that's you teaching him, you being vulnerable and being authentic is teaching him.
But it is scary to do that as parents because you want to be like, I got to be strong for them and I can't let them. And that was how I was. And then only then realizing, or in having him sometimes come up and say, like, there was a situation that happened and I said, hey, buddy, I'm really sorry that you saw that. And he was like, it's okay. I'm used to it, mommy. And I was like, oh, like, at that point, I knew I needed to change some things. And it had to do with a situation between me and my ex-husband. And I was like, oh my God, like, I can't. You think that you're protecting your kids, that they're not seeing things, but they see, they hear, they're little sponges, and they soak up everything. You can't say, I see as I do as I do and not as I say. What is it? How does that go? Wait a minute. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I do. I do. Do as I say, not as I do.
Yes, there we go. There we go. Yeah.
But that, correct, even with my son, like, in this process of, a couple of years ago, we got divorced and everything, and then he saw all these emotions and just all this stuff, and I masked all that shit in the past with drinking and, not wanting to feel my emotions, like shutting off the psychic stuff and like all the shit, like, or doing my best to, because you can't actually shut it off.
Right.
But, like,
it just comes out in other ways.
Yeah. But the best thing because I wasn't being honest with myself. That's what that was too. But the best thing for me to do was to just open up, be honest about absolutely everything, with my son. And, like, why did this happen? Well, this happened because XYZ,
right?
And just owning it, because, like, once you own it, that's a pathway to healing.
You got to speak it.
Because you got to speak it.
You do.
Yeah. And, like, people fuck up. I fucked up a lot, but that's okay. It's all a learning process. Like, I don't hate myself for it. Right. It's learn and move on.
And it got you there, right? And as long as you can take it and you can pivot it and you can use it and you can do something with it.
Yeah.
Then it got you here.
Yeah, exactly. It was a tool. It had its purpose at the time.
Divine timing, divine purpose, path, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah. And it's beautiful because, like, it's this, everything is always something to learn from. I don't care what we're talking about.
Right.
And now, I wasn't able to do it before, but now I'm really good at looking at everything from an objective point of view. Wherever someone's sitting at, whatever they're going through, it doesn't matter. They're on their path. They have their reasons why they do the things that they do, even the extreme shit that is totally unacceptable.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's not supposed to be judged. Like, it's not our job to judge people.
Right.
It's our job to understand and say, hey, what do you need help with?
Right. Or I don't have the capacity for this either. And so I think that's something too, because some of us want to be people pleasers or fixers or step into that space. And I was guilty of that for a long time, you know?
Yeah.
And so realizing, hey, I can empathize with where you're at. I can understand why you did what you did, but it's still not okay with me.
Oh, correct.
And how do we process through that? Or say, hey, I know you're on your own path and your own journey, but that doesn't fit with where I'm at right now. Or you can say, how can I help you? Like, here's what I've done, and see if they want to come forward and they want to meet you there. Or, hey, I'm totally here whenever you're ready.
Exactly. Holding space.
Right.
Because that's finding most of them just want to be heard. That's it. And a lot of people aren't even open to hearing it, you know, or they don't feel comfortable with those people that are close to them to tell them.
Right.
You know, and that's a hell of a place to be. I've been there.
Oh, for sure.
So, and going through, like, holy shit, it's the worst thing ever to not be able to talk to the people that you need to talk to, you know?
Right.
And because that, you know, then you ball up, you get in the fetal position, you do.
And then you carry it.
And then you carry it. Yeah.
Not just mentally, but
physically in your body. Yes.
So whether you're trying to, you know, when it comes to addiction, you know, people always want to talk about alcohol and drugs, but there's food.
There's all kinds.
There's all kinds of addictions that you can have that are just masking and stifling what needs to come out. You know what I mean? And so, like, when I had come out of my marriage and certain things were coming out, people were like, what? Like, we didn't. And I was like, unless somebody wants to tell you,
they're not going to
tell you. And that's really hard. And it wasn't their fault. It had to do that I had so much wrapped up in that. And I had been taught as a little girl, what happens in this house stays in this house. And so then because I hadn't dealt with my childhood stuff, and there was a lot going on there, and I had met my husband young, and I wanted out of that situation, I immediately moved into something else. And then when I got out of that marriage, then it was like, holy cow, like, this is the first time. I mean, I wasn't technically living alone. My kid was with me. But this is really the first time I've lived alone.
Yeah.
Holy cow, like, I don't know what to do with myself, and how do I sit with all of this? And it caused a lot of stuff to come out for me. And I really dived into therapy. I had started dabbling in Reiki. Like, I had somebody, and she was funny. She was like, hey, I do this Reiki, and, you know, I'd love for you to come over and get a session. I was like, you wanna? I looked it up, and I was like, that looks like some kooky stuff. Like, I'm like, I love you, but I don't know. She's like, just come. And I did it, and I was like, holy cow, what was that? And so sometimes if you can also put aside your own preconceived notions and expectations of things and be like, hey, let's just try it. Yeah. And then now do it. Now I do it. And I'm Reiki too. And I love it. And so it's one of those things. And then I started diving into, you know, the inner child work and the shadow work and grounding and tapping and meditation and like all of these things. And I'd pick up little nuggets and I'd try them. And then I'd be like, yep, not for me. And then I'd be like, ooh, I like that. And like, how do I fit some of that in and remove my own insecurities and expectations, but also stop worrying about everybody else's. And so I think for me, that was huge, because it's really sad how many people don't even like themselves.
They don't even know it.
They don't like themselves. They don't know who they are. They hate themselves. And so why do we care what they think about us? But that's a huge thing, right?
It is.
But you have to really, even with social media, everybody else's highlighted reel that you see is not real. It's not a real. It's fertilized with bullshit or whatever that they want to show you. And I'm not saying that all of that is bad, whatever, but it's how they choose to portray themselves and present themselves. And so we get caught up in this loop of comparing and thinking, oh, if I do this, what's somebody going to think? And so for me, it's been, how do I learn to say fuck it to everybody else's excuses and expectations? And some of those are mine. How do I learn to...
You hold on to that,
How do I learn to put my own shit away? And how do I learn to handle all of that? And so for me, when I had come out of that marriage, I took a really long time to kind of focus on myself. And I started dabbling in dating a little bit. And I was like, what in the heck is this stuff? Because I hadn't dated for so long. I mean, gosh, I was married for 21 years. I don't know what this stuff is. It's totally different.
Yeah.
And then I had met somebody, got into a really serious relationship. It was very healthy, very good. But when it ended, because our life was just kind of going down different paths, it was really painful for me.
Yeah.
Because I had deeply loved this person. And it kind of, how things kind of split was for the best, and it was completely amicable, and there was no issues there, but it was still difficult.
Sure.
But sitting in that, re-cracked open my childhood stuff, re-cracked open the stuff in my marriage, and I literally didn't know where to go. I was like, this is worse, because everything was happening. Because there was something about when you have a really good connection with somebody, whether it's platonic, friendship, family, romantic,
and that ends.
That connection opens you up even more.
Yeah.
Because to have that connection, you have to be so raw, so vulnerable, so open. So now you're cracked.
Yeah.
And now you're realizing all these crevices that are there. And so then I had always had people say, oh, you should journal. And I was like, no. You want me to put everything that's in here, which I feel is kind of crazy right now, on paper and let people see it? You're out of your freaking mind. And so at one point I created like a Google Doc on my phone. I'd type in there and then I'd lock it, because I was so paranoid. Okay, people don't really care what I'm writing, but I was so self-enthralled at the time. I really thought anybody would care. And so they say people think about you so much less than you think that they do. And that's so true, right? Get out of your own head. Stop putting yourself on this huge pedestal, right?
Yeah, right.
So then I was like, okay. So then I started writing in a book, and I found that I had so much emotion and I didn't know where to put it. And so they say grief is like love stuck with nowhere to go. And so I was like, oh, what do I do with this? And so I sat down and I started to write, and poem after poem. And I had never wrote poetry before, ever in my life. It just started flowing and flowing and flowing. And it was so raw and so vulnerable. And I had shown my personal development coach some. Mm-hmm. And she was like, you should really put this out there. And I was like, no. And she was like, and she knew. Her motto for me is, if it scares you, you need to do it. She's like, that's your trigger that you need to leap. And so she said that, and I was like, okay. Because I trust her. I trust her to lead me down that path. And she wasn't wrong. And I knew my inner person was going, mm-hmm. Because I love the self-help realm, but there is, and I hate to put these two words together, but there's a layer of toxic positivity at times of, it's fine, everything happens for a reason, it'll be all good.
You're right.
Well, that's true. And I will use some of those things from time to time, but it's also okay to scream and cry and yell and feel your emotions. Sit in your stuff and say, I'm really struggling. And it is not okay. It does not feel like it's going to be okay.
Right.
And I need to feel this, because otherwise, if you only look at the positive, you're also masking.
Yes.
And so I started putting some of it out there, and she's like, I think you really should put these in a zine. And I was like, no. Well, then I did it.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a bunch of them printed, and I'm sitting in the car paralyzed, bawling hysterically, going, what am I doing? This is not good enough. These are not good enough. Nobody cares what you have to say. This is shit. What are you doing? And this was my negative talk to myself, right?
Yeah.
And we all have that, mm-hmm. And it's hard to be nice to yourself when you're mean to yourself all the time.
Yeah.
And so I'm in a panic, and I literally call her up. I'm like, snot.
Yeah.
If anybody was walking by the store, they'd be like, what is that crazy lady doing,
Yeah.
And within 5 minutes, she had me talked off the ledge. And I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm going to go drop the books off, And so from there, I started doing some workshops, and it was so beautiful. The very first one I had gone to, I used to teach. When I worked in healthcare for 20 plus years, I worked in patient care, and then I worked in leadership and education. So I would teach hundreds and hundreds of people. So I have no problem talking in front of groups. Mm-hmm. But a lot of that was structured. What I was going to say, I had a PowerPoint, and it was all, well, that's not how those types of things should go. They can go, and people do them that way, but that's not really the energy that it's going to take you where it needs to go for the day.
Right.
And so I get there, and I had thought it was just a women's yoga retreat. Half of them were men. And I was like, well, my book is strictly, at that point, my poetry mainly was strictly from a woman's view. And I was kind of in the process because a lot of people had said, well, how did you get from here to here? Because they saw me at my Hot Mess Express and they had seen where I was, which was still hot mess, but a little bit of getting there, I'm never not a hot mess. And so it's fine, and so they're like, well, how did you get there? And I would try to tell them little things, but it got to be so much. I was like, they're like, well, maybe would you like write it all down for me? And then I was like, well, I could maybe just do like a journal with modalities and different things to try. So I was kind of in the process of creating that while I had gone to this workshop. So I get to the workshop, and I kind of had an idea in my head of what I wanted to say, because I never want to talk at people. I want them involved.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went around and asked them to talk about their path. What did they hope to get out of this? Which poem connected with them the most and which one triggered them the most? And let's talk about it as a group, because it's not just let's me be up here as a teacher and talk at them and teach them. Like, no. And so it was really cool because they taught each other. And it was like, at the end, we were all crying, it was beautiful.
Everyone got engaged in it.
Everybody got engaged. But it was really cool because with the men, it was just beautiful. Like, they were coming up to me and they had bought copies. And it was so cool because, again, we all struggle with the same thing. We just struggle differently. And we come at it from different angles. And I think sometimes society wants to say, well, if you're a feminist, then you should hate men. And if if you're a man, you should hate women. And, but it's beautiful. The ebb and flow, when it's healthy, is beautiful. There's toxicity in both, right? And so it was so cool to watch. Like, you literally, you could almost see like the ebb and the flow of the energy and the connection in that room. Like, it was so beautiful. Yeah. And so I was like, this is my passion. Like, this is it. This is what fills my soul. Like, I felt like I was like riding high. Like, I had just ran a marathon because I used to run marathons. So I was like, I didn't know I could ever have this feeling again. And so then I went and I put together a small snippet of some different modalities and some journal prompts that were very basic, because I wanted something that anybody who maybe hadn't done anything could come in and do without feeling so overwhelmed. But it would also kind of kick them in the keister at the same time.
Yeah. Okay.
And cause them to really look at themselves in the mirror. And so I did that. And I actually started writing last January. So it's just only been a year. And so then over this last year, I've added more things I've wanted to do. I've gotten more feedback. I've wrote a crap ton more poetry. So then recently I put everything together in one book, the new, the old, and all of that. And so that's what I have right now. But that's kind of how my process got to be where it's at now. And I realized, as much as I partially enjoyed the skincare and it was a moneymaker for me, my passion wasn't in it anymore, and it was holding me back. And so I've had a hard time letting some of those things go, because you kind of get your persona wrapped up in that, and it's an easy. Yeah. It's not going to cause you to really level it up
and grow.
And so I was like, I can't stay here. I need to put you over here. Maybe I'll visit you again later, but I need to focus on this. So that's really where I'm at, is focusing on my writing, and my books and my speaking, and where that takes me, I don't know, but it's been beautiful to have somebody come up to me in tears and saying, I don't feel alone. I thought nobody else felt this way. And I think if you can be vulnerable, everybody's struggling. And so if you give somebody the tiniest little opening and they give you a tiniest little bit of opening, then you can meet each other there. And it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. It's just that energy, that authentic, vulnerable energy.
Right.
And it opens other people up.
Right.
It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Like, it's how people connect. I'm just feeling it.
Right. Yeah.
Like, so, and also, like, in your process too, like, you literally, to be your authentic self, you cannot give a fuck about what anyone else thinks. Like, it is impossible.
And it still rears its ugly head. Like,
I'll
go do something and then I'll catch myself thinking about it. Or, some people have judgments because, I can cuss like a sailor. I've got lots of tattoos. But I'm also spiritual and I believe in God and I believe in the universe and I believe in this, or because I don't work a 9 to 5 and I do this and I do that, I can sometimes get caught up in that of, oh, what does this person think? Or somebody will tell me what they think about it. And I have to learn to be like, okay, like that's great for you, you know? And so there's certainly no level of perfection with that, but you really do. If you want to show up, and people can tell when you're being fake as shit.
Yeah.
Like they can tell when you're being authentic. And it's like, if you just show them who you are, then let them decide whether they want to be in your life and whether you want to be in theirs. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. And
even when it says no, you're like, thanks for being a season or a reason, it's beautiful.
Everyone in your life everyone in your life is a season, a reason, or a lifetime. Is that?
Yeah. Something along those lines. Yeah.
But it's just, everything is just so great when you're able to look at things from that lens, and not care about what anyone else thinks, because whatever excites you, whatever you need to move towards, you should.
Right.
And I would encourage everyone to have the biggest imaginations that they can possibly have, because without that, where are you going?
What if we all did the same thing? How boring that would be.
Yeah.
If we all liked and did the same things.
Yeah.
And just were robots.
And there's
stagnation is death.
Yes. Well, there is no growth there.
No.
Or anything.
And that's what I started to do. I started to, I love to travel. Last year, I think I went somewhere every month. It's a little crazy. That's
great,
but I started realizing I had these fears. And so the first a trip I took after my divorce, I had decided, you know what, I'm going to take this trip by myself. I had never taken a trip by myself. And I was kind of going to go off grid, and I was going to bebop my way from Washington, Illinois, all the way up to the UP in Michigan. And I was just my trauma response can be to overplan and control. And so I've learned to completely let that go, because for me, it was in my mind, I would think, oh, if I can plan and I can do all these things, then I can plan for everything that can go wrong. And control is an absolute illusion. You're so full of yourself.
Yeah.
It is not going to work. And there's no beauty in that. I've learned that I need to soften. I want to receive. I want to relax. I want to flow into, each person has femininity and masculinity, if you want to talk about that. But for me, I've had to learn that I was stuck in my masculine, where I needed to do, because I didn't have that in my marriage. I was the one that had to take care of everything. And so I learned that I could trust myself.
Yeah.
And then I could trust others, and I could soften. Now that matters the energy of the people I'm around, and where I can be like, okay, yep, you're putting me back into where I feel like I need control. This doesn't work for me. I want to feel soft. I need to receive. And being able to receive as a woman can be hard, to be able to say, yes, I want you to help me. Yes, I can let you help me. I can do these things on my own. But as a woman, I don't want to. You know what I mean? So learning that has been a process for me. But also learning to be alone was important for me. And so I took this trip, and I was sitting on Lake Superior, and I had backpacked, and I had climbed, and I had kayaked pictured rocks, and I just literally went on this huge long adventure. And I remember sitting on the beach, having a drink on Lake Superior in my tent, and being like, this is my life. I am so fucking proud of myself. Look at where I am. And look at also all the people that made this happen for me. I am not a silo. And so look at all the people that showed up for me, that love me to help make this happen. And I literally was a ball bag, on this beach. And so I travel a lot. I want to see the world. I want to experience it. My base is my home. But I think it's so important that we all find a passion, something that you want to do, that you date yourself. Because it's so important to show that love for yourself, whether it's take a book and go out to dinner, whether it's to take a hike in the woods by yourself, to whatever that might be. That would be the biggest thing I think that I would want your listeners to take away, or the people who read my book, whatever it is find something that's yours. Yeah. Find something that fills your cup, regardless of what anybody else says. Because if you don't, you're going to be unfulfilled because you're doing for everybody else. Yes. And so for me, at that point, I vowed I travel solo every year at least once. And so there's just something when you quiet the noise and you sit with yourself, you get such a level, I get chills, but you get such a level of appreciation for where you're at and who you are, and you really sit with stuff. So sitting with stuff and in silence shouldn't have to always be negative. Sometimes it is, as far as it causes you to really look at stuff that you need to do. Yes. But it's so important that we get out of this task-driven society of I need to do this and this and this. Yep. Maybe you just need to do nothing. And what does that look like? You know?
Yeah.
And so I was at a workshop a week ago, and we were talking about doing, and I wasn't the one leading it, but we were talking about, doing things for yourself. And one of the women was like, but I can't do that. That's selfish. But so many people think that if they take time for themselves, it's selfish.
No, we need to.
And they'll be like, well, I don't have time. And I immediately, bullshit, you got 5 minutes. And sometimes I can be a little blunt, but it's like, and I'm soft with it also, but everybody's got 5 minutes. I know what it's like. Get up a little early, take 5 minutes. Like, you need it. Like, if you are showing up burnt the fuck out, stressed, anxious, unhappy, that's the version of yourself that you're giving to yourself, but also to other people.
Yes.
And so you're such a different person when you come at it. And so one of the biggest things I learned coming out of my marriage was I can't make somebody else happy. And when you tell people that, sometimes they freak out. And I'm like, they're like, well, you can try. Like, I had somebody say that. And it's like, no, you mistake what I mean.
Yeah.
Happiness is a self-fulfilled job. Like, especially if you're talking about a romantic connection. Like, you can't come in where you're an unhappy person and then bring in another unhappy person with themselves and then come together and be happy. Like, that's a real struggle. Because what are you bringing in? Like, you're wanting that person to fill everything for you, and you can't. Now, that doesn't mean in a romantic connection that you don't grow together and support each other in their individual happiness, and then you work on your together happiness. Like, that's not what I'm saying. That all that's important.
Yeah.
But I would always try to give things to make somebody happy, or to do this and do that. Or let's buy this. If I buy this, then I'll be happy. If I date this person, then I'll be happy. If I, get this or that, like, I'm completely I don't really give two shits about money. I mean, you need it to live, but it doesn't do anything for me. And so, like, if you're grasping at all these things to make you happy, it's not going to work, because it's never enough. There's never enough of a person or thing to make you happy if you don't have your happiness within yourself. And so I think, how do you figure that out? You have to sit with it.
Yeah. And
try things until you figure out what you like to do again.
Yeah. And letting go.
Right.
And just letting shit happen.
Right.
Like you and your story with, like, you just move wherever you want, do whatever you want, do whatever excites you.
Kind of nomad a little bit sometimes. Yeah.
But that's perfect. That's how it should be. You do the things that excite you.
Right.
That you're drawn towards.
And sometimes they're scary, and other people aren't going to get it. Like, I did a Via Ferrata, and I was hanging off the side of a mountain, and I remember when I was going to go, I had gone out to dinner like a couple weeks before, and there was a TikTok that had popped up, and it showed my exact Via Ferrata that I was doing. Mm-hmm. And I'm terrified of heights, by the way, so that was really interesting to do. But I showed a video to my dad, and he watched it. He looked at me, and he watched it, and then he put the phone down because he knew better than to, like, say anything.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where it's really hard for other people to understand your path, whatever that looks like. And
it's yours alone.
Yeah, and if you get stuck in that, like we talked about, you're going to spin around in the toilet bowl, because they don't know your path. They don't know where you've been.
Yeah.
That got you here. They don't know what's in your soul. They don't know the work that you've done, that you've not done, the things that have happened to you. And so it's so important to just, for us to focus on us and not to, like you talked about, judge other people, get caught up in their expectations and judgments and all of that.
Yeah. It can be very difficult to separate yourself from all that.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
I think we go back and forth, right?
Right.
About it. Because shit, we may still need to work on it. The work never stops.
No.
Actually.
And something else is good, and then something else pops up like a whack-a-mole, I'm like, stop it, go back down.
Yeah.
I don't have time for you.
Yeah, but at least, like, through like the process of life, you learn how to deal with those things better when they show up.
Right.
You know, or you're able to recognize, you know, these feelings when they show up and why they're showing up.
Oh man, I'm triggered right now and I'm freaking out inside. Why am I freaking out? And how do I sit with that for a second and then take it to the person that it happened with and say, hey.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to not stuff that. I do believe our triggers are our own responsibility. Our emotions are our own responsibility.
Right.
But the people that love you, love you. The people that love you, like you, care about you, will care about how you feel and the things that they do that make you feel. That sounds so basic, but that was such an epiphany to me. I was like, man, like that's so basic. So like if you have people in your life that don't care about how they make you feel, continually dismiss your feelings, that's your sign that there's something going on there that maybe you need to reevaluate, and that's up to you to figure out. But for me, like that's the biggest thing. The people that I can't talk to, and now it matters your presentation, right? Like if I go, like if you make me angry and I start screaming at you, that's on me.
Yeah.
But if I come to you in a gentle, kind, open, connective, vulnerable way and say, hey, when you said this, I felt this. Can we talk about it? Yeah. You know, your person on the other end should, I hate that word, but should want to listen to you. Now, maybe ideally, that's a better word.
Yeah.
You know, they should want to hear you. They should want to listen to you. They may not understand it, and you may not understand their feelings, but if you care about that person, you don't want them to feel that way. And so I think having those conversations and having the vulnerability to do it, because you will never ruin a connection that's meant to be, whether that's platonic, romantic, friends, family, whatever that might be. And I've had to really do a relationship check.
Reevaluation.
Right. Yeah. Like, let's reevaluate. Let's sit down and take notes here, you know?
Yeah.
Are you taking more than you're giving, you know, and that kind of a thing. And where's my responsibility also in that? And so I've had to learn boundaries, and what are those? And I talk a lot about boundaries are doors, not walls. And so some people hide behind boundaries, and they hide beside, well, I'm just honest. No, you're just being a dick. You know, there's a layer to, you can present yourself in a gentle way. You can be a kind human being and still not tolerate a certain amount of things. Yeah. And so I've had to cut out, you know, friends, family, romantic connections, whatever that might be, that I've had to say, you know, we're not in the same space.
That's okay.
That's okay, but this isn't working for me. Or I've had to reevaluate, okay, if I'm going to go to family dinner with XYZ, am I in the space for it today? Let's do an energy check today.
Yeah, right.
No. And that's okay. And so then I say, hey, I'm sorry, I really can't make it, you know, or I check in and say, okay, I can, but here's what I need to do for myself. And so it all comes back to self.
Everything does.
Right.
Well, like I said, all the answers are already inside of you. You just got to sit down and
sometimes you don't like them.
Oh my gosh. I know.
You want me to do that? Damn it. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be very difficult, but like it's 100% necessary.
Right.
To be with yourself, you know, because that's where you learn.
Right.
That's where you learn what you need to do, you know, where to grow.
And you're with yourself and in this brain and in this body and in this spirit 24 hours a day for, I don't know, you would like to think 100 years maybe? I don't know.
Something. Yeah, who knows?
So if it's really hard to live in a home that is chaotic and unhappy and angry, and it's just, that is unfulfilled. It's really hard. And, you know, I have days where I'm like, I don't want to get out of bed. I'm struggling, or I need to literally kick my own. Like, I have a ringtone.
Oh, so do I.
Yeah, I have a ringtone that pops up now. And, you know, that says, you were not born on this earth to be a weak ass bitch. Get up, or something like that, you know? And so that I just said it, and it went off this morning, and I was like, okay. I was like, you know, anything that you can do to have fun, you know, like, have fun. Like,
laugh.
And I did a video on this that had to do with inner child a couple weeks ago on my page. And it was like, the people that you feel safe to be silly and to be stupid and do the quirky things. Because for me, with the type of abuse that I had dealt with in my childhood, I didn't have a chance to be a little girl and have fun. She didn't dance around. She didn't have fun. And so one of the questions that I ask in my book is, if I ask you your favorite memory as a child, what is that? And some people you have to think. And for me, it was such a simple memory, but it was me listening to Paula Abdul with my tape cassette, roller skating around in my garage, which does not sound like anything huge.
Yeah.
But literally, I don't remember a lot of my childhood. But in that moment, there was no arguing, there was no drama, there was no all these other things that were going on, and I was just siloed in that garage in my own space with music. And so one of the things I ask people to do is recreate your memory. And so I downloaded Paula Abdul on Apple Music, and I took my son and his friend, and they thought it was for them. I was like, hey guys, want to go to the skate rink? And they're like, I guess. I was like, okay, get in the car. And I took them and I skated around and I listened to her album at the roller rink. And they're like, Christina's mom, can we go? I'm like, not one more song, you know? But it was like, it's such a simple thing, but how do we get back to the simplicity of just having fun? Like every day I start my morning, I crank the music, my dog goes and gets his toy because he knows it's dance time, and he comes in and we dance around and we listen to music, we move our body, and we just have fun. But how do you get back to that? Because as adults, just because we're adults doesn't mean you have to check fun at the fucking door, but so many of us do. I did for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was like, oh, what if I dance too loud, I speak too loud, I laugh too loud? I put googly eyeballs on things, you know, it's something fun that I do. I always carry them in my purse. And so if I'm at Walmart or I'm at a restaurant, you know, I'll just put them on things because it's funny. Yeah. But if you come across it, it's probably going to make you laugh too. Cause you're like, what the hell is that? You know? And so my son will be like, oh my God, Mom, not the eyeballs, please no. And he'll take off, you know, cause he thinks it's stupid. But like, how do you, we were out, I took my grandparents out and they're like in their mid 80s, you know, to dinner. And I pulled out the eyeballs and Roger goes, Grandma, here she goes. She's got the eyeballs out. Oh my God. You know? And she's like, well, what's the eyeballs? I was like, these, do you want some? She's like, what are you doing, Chris? Because my family calls me Chris. And I was just like, well, it's just fun. She was like, okay, you know? But it's like, find your people that you can be silly with, that you can have fun with, because life is too short. There's time to be on it, but there's also a time to just let loose and have fun.
Decompress.
Be
yourself.
And so pay attention to the energy of the people you're with. Like I noticed that, like if I can't be stupid and I can't be silly and I can't laugh and I can't be vulnerable, like those are my bare minimums. Like if I can't do that with that person, I don't care who the person is. Platonic, family, friends, you know, relationships, romantic, whatever. If I can't do that, you're not my person. Because one, I'm going to annoy the fuck out of you in about 2 months, you know? And you're going to be like, oh my gosh. And then I don't want to start to shrink.
No.
I don't want to go back to that unhealed version of myself. I don't want to quiet. I don't want to be inauthentic.
Nobody should have to do that.
It's gross to be inauthentic. Yeah. So find your people. And that's cool. The people that don't like those things, that's cool. Just means that they're not your person. So figure out what's more important to you. What are those things that you want in your life that truly make you happy? Not just okay, you know? Like what sets your soul on fucking fire?
Do that.
Do more of that every day. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Light yourself on fire. I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
Don't actually light yourself on fire.
Don't actually do that.
But I mean, it's absolutely true though. Like we are supposed to be having fun and living our lives, you know. Right.
And there's a time to get stuff done and all that. But even as like food prep, I'm cranking the music and dancing around, you know.
You can still have fun doing that stuff.
You can still have fun, you know, in between sets at the gym and weights. I'm like dancing in between. And part of me, I don't give two shits anymore. But at first I'd be like, oh, I wonder if somebody sees. Now I'm just like, you know, I don't care.
You cannot.
Because, and if you want to join? You want to join? You want the other earbud? Like, I don't know, you know, you want to get down. Yeah. But it's fun, right? Because when you do that, you also don't have to think about how to show up in situations. You don't have to double think. You don't have to second guess. You don't have to.
Chameleon.
The second I start to go, oh, but what if I do that? Then I go, oh no.
Then
Here
that's
I
not
go.
for you.
I'm reverting, and I will do that because I've known that I can do that, and I know that that's something that I have to be mindful of because that's on me.
Yeah.
If I shrink, that's nobody else's fault but my own. But I will do that, and I don't want to do that, so I have to catch that shit early on to figure that out. And so it's funny. My brother lives in Colorado, and we do a lot of stuff together. And it was funny because they just know how I am, so they're used to it, but you know. And so we had got up early, my sister-in-law and we were having coffee, and I kind of have like a raunchy sense of humor.
Okay.
And she laid something out. I just hit it out the park. She planted it out there. It wasn't my fault. And then she's like, "It's too early for your shit."
Yeah.
It's like, it is never too early for my shit. I said, "You know what you got?" She's like, "I know." You know, like And it's fine. Like, it becomes this, you know, joke. But my son is also equally as goofy and fun.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool to watch him figure out who his people are that align with the things that work for him too, and watching him also learn to be an advocate for himself, because I've learned to be an advocate for myself.
Yes.
Where he says, I don't like this. I don't, you know, this doesn't work for me. Or, you know, he was at work last week and he got upset with his boss about something. And then when he got home, he was like, you know, I went and I had to apologize, you know, because it wasn't right that I this, and this, you know. And so apologize to your kids. Apologize.
Yeah.
You know, like, I've had to apologize to him. It's like, own every layer of that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's okay. That's beautiful. Because in doing that, it teaches them, you know.
Yes.
And if you can be vulnerable with your person, it teaches them they can be vulnerable with you. If you can apologize, it teaches them they can apologize. You know, like, again, it's that exchange.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think everything should be like that.
Right.
But we fight that shit.
We do.
All the time.
We do.
Because it's just ingrained in us.
Mm-hmm.
But
from generational stuff, right? Because I think it was the custom. Like, I hear that all the time from my grandmother if I'm doing certain things on the level that she thinks I should be doing things. And I'm just like, no.
Doesn't matter.
I'm like, I love you, but that doesn't work for me. Here's where I'm at, you know? And so I think if your parents were taught to stuff it, and their parents, that's just what they were taught, you know? But you can break that, you know, whether you want to call it a generational curse, a generational whatever. The point is at some point you can break it, and it's hard.
Up to you. Yeah.
But you can do it, you know.
Yeah. Based on the decisions that you make about moving forward.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And holy shit, that was difficult. You know.
Right.
But yeah, like, fears of my family, like leaving my old job and doing this, and you know what I mean, like, you can't do that, you can't, like, I'm like, do not put your fear on me,
right? Because I got enough of my own. Thank you very much.
Like, I don't believe me, this is fucking scary, but I'm doing it,
right?
You know,
right.
Like,
leap.
Leap. Yes, like, you have to,
and if you fail,
that's okay.
You're okay. Like, I don't want. One thing that I remember having a moment, and I was like, I don't want. Because I was working a lot for OSF constantly, and then I had all these other jobs and all these different things going. And then I was like, you know what? I don't want on my tombstone, here lies Christina who worked 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like
didn't live her fucking life.
Right. Because what is it? The Christmas, not the Christmas Story, but the one where Scrooge and, you know, all these past.
A Christmas Carol.
Yeah. But I was like, I don't want that. I don't want to only be known because I worked. I don't only, like, those are not things that I want to have as my persona. And I'm not just a mom. And I think, or you're not just a father. Like, how do you not separate those things, but how do you still be you within each of those things? And so, like, I wasn't just an educator and a mom and a wife, but for a long time, that was the label I put on myself. Yeah. And if I did anything outside of that, I would criticize myself.
Yeah.
And so understanding that we are still our own human beings.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Who is Christina?
You get to define
Who is
that.
Judd? And what does that mean?
Yeah, we all get to define that.
Right.
And it can be ever changing.
Mm-hmm.
It is ever changing based on what we've learned.
Exactly.
Or what we're willing to move forward with and release those fears and shit that we built up in our fucking minds.
Right. Right.
You know? And we get to define what we believe as well. That's why there are so many different belief systems.
Right.
Like you know very well.
Right.
You know, that you can take a piece of this and a piece of this and a piece of this.
That's my house I'm building with different bricks, right?
Yeah.
From different things.
Yeah.
Not everybody agrees with that, and that's okay too.
That's okay too.
Right? But this is what it looks like to me, and I feel most connected. And spirituality, again, comes back to self. So, like, how do I connect with myself? How do I connect with others? And I use these modalities and I use these different things to do that.
And nobody is wrong for what they believe.
Right.
Nobody.
No, not at all.
And like, because wherever you're at, you know, however you were raised, wherever you are on your path.
Right.
You know, in your growth process and everything. And it's all okay.
Right. And if I don't want to be judged, I also have to check my judgment.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right. So, you know, trying to not look at somebody else like we talked about.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
Because they don't think the same way that I do. You know?
Right. Nobody is better than anyone else. Nobody is. And it's once you actually, I struggled with that. Like, why is this person, you know, when I was a lot younger, why is this person doing this? Why is this person doing that? And then it's like getting older, you know, coming to those realizations of, well, they have their reasons. Everybody has their reasons for what the things that they do.
Or envy, or they've got a lot of money, but I bet you they're not happy.
Yeah, money doesn't.
Right, or they've got this. Well, that, you know. Well, you know, I'm not married and this person's married. Well, you also know what's going on in that marriage, right? So, or, you know, I work a 9 to 5 and there's pros and cons to that too. So, like, there's no perfect path or no perfect thing regardless.
No, it's whatever you do, whatever you decide. And that's what's perfect about life. It's in what we choose to do with it. You know, it's all up to us. We get to mold it and flex it and build it. Exactly. It's all clay.
I can build it.
Yeah. You know.
Yes, you can.
It's perfect. Right.
I need my hat.
Yeah.
Right.
But this has been a great conversation. Where are your books at? Where can, you know?
They are on Amazon. And so it's called Messages to Her, From Her, For Her. So the reason I picked that was for the different parts of myself, the past versions of me, the current, and the future version of myself.
Yeah.
And so it's Messages to Her, From Her, and For Her, Poetry and Journal for Badass Women is the title.
Okay.
And so, so they're on Amazon. They're on Etsy. They're at the Zinger Zinger shop in Germantown. They are also at Soul Restoration in Pekin. They'll be at Relics hopefully soon, as well as the Bent Penny in Washington hopefully soon as well. Just working on some schematics there, and then a few other places that I'm in some networking processes with.
Is there anything else you'd like to say, like put out there, like for your business, like how people contact you?
I've been toying around with the idea of, you know, getting a TikTok and Instagram and all that, but I haven't done that yet. On Facebook, I'm under May Rocky by Christina, because my skincare company was May Rocky, which it's a Greek word which stands for putting a piece of yourself and love into everything that you do. So it still kind of aligns, but Facebook won't let me change the name yet until mid-February. So currently
it's under that.
It's MERAKI by Christina. Otherwise, eventually it'll go to Her by Christina.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple workshops that are coming up, but those are still in the process. So I don't have dates and things like that, but I'll put everything out on my Facebook. Or you can find me Christina Schatsiek as well, but good luck spelling that one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's SCHATSIEK.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, you can find me there.
Yeah. You want to pull a card?
I do.
All right.
I liked this one.
Yeah.
Do you want it or did I get it?
Well, you get it, but we can put it up to the camera. It is Plant the Seed of a New Template. Are you moving on to something else?
Seems
now?
fair. Seems fair. Well, I feel like I'm constantly building my life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That seems fair.
Yeah.
Right? A new template for your life, because I am kind of redoing the books, kind of stepping away from some different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seems perfect.
If you'd like.
Yeah, it's one. So it's the first one. Look at that.
Look at
that. Do not feel obligated to follow the dictates of society. Go against the grain. Everything you need to succeed is within you. Preach. This painting is my vision of the profound Vidrus master from the Siberian taiga, Anastasia. She is the inspiration and subject of the remarkable Ringing Cedar series book. Do we read all of that? I think it just kind of talks about the painting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It says, Anastasia reveals the interconnectedness of all life and a template for harmonious living upon the earth. With her revolutionary vision for man in the 21st century, she rewrites history and explains how we are all divine beings. Preach. Edgar Cayce predicted that out of Russia will come the hope of the world. Nice.
Yeah, that is great. That has a lot to do with what we've been talking about.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
Yeah, it is.
I love it.
Well, thank you for being on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I've had a great conversation.
Yeah.
We could probably go on for hours.
Yes, we
could.
I'm
Yeah,
sure.
we probably could.
Well, anyways, thanks for joining us on Spiritual AF Podcast. Thank you, Christina, for being here.
Thank you.
And namaste.